Yesterday, 63 days after the first attempt on President Trump, which took off part of his ear, 50 days before the presidential election, President Trump was almost assassinated again. So, of course, the liberal media reported on the assassination attempt by blaming it on Trump.
Today's apparent assassination attempt comes amid increasingly fierce rhetoric on the campaign trail itself. Mr. Trump, his running mate J.D. Vance continue to make baseless claims about Haitian immigrants in Ohio. This weekend, there were new bomb threats in that town. Our Maggie Vespa is in Columbus, Ohio, with more.
Lester, simply put, Springfield, Ohio has been inundated by threats over the last several days, closing government buildings, schools, hospitals.
The assassination attempt today, the second assassination attempt on Donald Trump, comes as he totally deserves it. He totally deserves it because he said that migrants are eating cats in Ohio, which they are, by the way. He says it's a baseless claim. We have the evidence for it coming up later in the show. But even if it were fake, by the way, even if it were totally fake, which it's not, it's real. But even if what he said had absolutely zero basis in reality, you're going to tell me, yes, the real story here is how much Trump deserves to be shot. That is a pretty extreme take, even for the establishment media. They hate Trump. But they don't want to talk about the attempted assassination, the second attempted assassination of the former president and current Republican presidential nominee. They immediately blame him for almost being killed again, and then move on to some other stupid story. That's weird. They don't want to talk about it. But we will. The alleged assassin, Ryan Routh, is a Democrat voter and donor who was known not only to law enforcement for years, but to the establishment media, including the New York Times, which has interviewed Mr. Routh. He was known for working on behalf of the Ukraine Foreign Legion. The first assassination attempt occurred 19 days after the first presidential debate, which was disastrous for Democrats. Yesterday's attempt occurred 5 days after the second presidential debate, which went better for Democrats, but which really didn't succeed at blunting Trump's support. So many are wondering about these strange coincidences. Many are speculating as to what it all means. Who is this man? Did he have institutional support? What do we make of the many strange coincidences in both assassination attempts? We will get into the details. The clearest takeaway is this. Assassins generally don't target politicians who are or are likely to remain powerless. There are 49 days until the election. This is not the end of the story. I'm Michael Knowles. This is The Michael Knowles Show. Welcome back to the show. I mentioned cats being cooked in Ohio. We'll get to that because our friend Chris Rufo has the goods. While the liberal media have called this a crazy, wild conspiracy theory, he has video of this actually taking place because he's a very good journalist and gets a lot of scoops. Before we get into any of these stories, I want to tell you about one of my favorite books. That is The Collected Poems of Donald J. Trump. Go to dailywire.com/shop. This is, I suppose, a fitting ad for the show. With the stories today, this is for the collected poems of Donald J. Trump. Do you remember when checking Twitter was the first thing you did every morning, eager to see what President Trump had shared overnight? You can relive that moment that reshaped presidential communication and captivated a nation with the collected poems of Donald J. Trump. I have had my copy of the collected poems of Donald J. Trump for years now. A friend of mine made this, and there were not very many copies printed, and he gave me one, and I really cherished it. You can see it's Trump tweets written as poems on very high-quality paper. They're poems in the style of E.E. Cummings, but it's the words of Donald Trump, meticulously compiled from the president's most prolific period. This collection transforms Trump's tweets into poetic form. Own a piece of history that makes the perfect coffee table book by going to dailywire.com/shop today. Who is the man who tried to murder Trump again yesterday? He was known to law enforcement He was known to the liberal media. He was known to the New York Times. He was obsessed, fanatically obsessed with the war in Ukraine. He tried to recruit soldiers for the war in Ukraine to fight on behalf of Ukraine. He gave interviews to the establishment media in print and in video. Here we have an interview he gave to Semaphore. This guy's name is Ryan Routh. Most of the Ukrainian authorities do not want these soldiers, said Ryan Routh, head of the International Volunteer Center in Ukraine, a private organization which helps foreigners seeking to assist the war effort connect with military units and aid groups. I have had partners meeting with Ukraine's Ministry of Defense every week and still have not been able to get them to agree to issue one single visa. He's talking about Afghanis that he was trying to bring over to fight in Ukraine after the Taliban took over Afghanistan. So this is a guy who has fairly sophisticated foreign connections. Let's leave it at that. The New York Times wrote about him. This was a year ago. This was more than a year ago, June 2023. With Foreign Legion growth stalling, Ryan Routh, a former construction worker from Greensboro, North Carolina, is seeking recruits from among Afghan soldiers who fled the Taliban. Mr. Routh, who spent several months in Ukraine last year, said he planned to move them, in some cases illegally, from Pakistan to Iran to Ukraine. He said dozens had expressed interest. We can probably purchase some passports through Pakistan since it's such a corrupt country, he said in an interview from Washington. It's not clear whether he has succeeded, but one former Afghan soldier said he had been contacted when was interested in fighting if it meant leaving Iran where he was living illegally. So I read those to point out, this is not just some, I'm sure he's a wacko too, but he's not just some wacko. This is a guy who was actually doing things in politics, in international politics, things that were being noted by Semaphore, by the New York Times. Here's a video interview that this guy gave that was obtained and published by Newsweek.
The question as far as why I'm here, to me, a lot of the other conflicts are gray, but this conflict is definitely black and white. This is about good versus evil. This is a storybook, any movie we ever watched, this is definitely evil against good. We're battling a situation here where, the Ukrainians and the rest of the world are caring and kind and generous and unselfish and take care of one another. And it's just a matter of, we need to stand up for that. That is the most important thing in the world, is just to show human beings that we're kind and we're caring and that we take care of one another and that the world is united so that we feed each other and make sure that, we all move forward as one collective whole unit. So, we feel the pain of one country's failure and their conflicts, and we enjoy the successes of other countries that are doing good, and we all work together. And for some reason, Russia does not grasp this concept that we're all one unit.
So if you're just listening to this guy, he sounds a little out there. He's speaking in really vague terms. Most important thing in the world is just, he's showing because Ukrainians are nice and Russians aren't nice. And we have to show the world how that's the most important thing, is to show them how nice Ukrainians are. He sounds a little wacky. If you're watching, he looks even wackier. He's wearing a T-shirt, a sort of ill-fitting T-shirt. His hair is looking all crazy. He's got a little bit of a scraggly whiskers, short little beard. So he seems out there, but I think he gave that interview from Ukraine. So this is a guy who was actively contacting Afghani soldiers and who reportedly spent some time in Ukraine and was pretty seriously working there. This guy, Routh, then appeared in a commercial for the Ukrainian armed forces. It's being reported that it's actually for the Azov battalion, which has Nazi connections. Here's a commercial that just popped up and obviously went viral yesterday.
Purpose of the action is to appeal to what leaders.
There's another young woman. There he is. There's the guy and then some other young woman, and it's all just different faces. So it's kind of odd. This guy's been popping up in the media, including in a fairly glossy commercial. Now, this should set off your coincidence detector, because 64 days ago, after the last assassination attempt on Trump, the shooter in that case, who did succeed at killing people, also was discovered to have appeared in a commercial. In that case, it was a commercial not for the Azov Battalion, but for BlackRock.
My name is Brian DeLallo. I teach AP and Honors Economics in Pittsburgh,
shooter,
Pennsylvania.
Right there.
Financial well-being to
I think
me
he pops
is
up again in the
knowing
commercial,
that
but
I can be
that's
free
enough
to
of
do
it.
the
We don't
things
need
that
to
I
see
love
any
to
more
do.
of that guy than we have to. So what do we make of all this? That's the background. Facts are coming out now. The news is developing even as we're speaking right now. But people, of course, are jumping to all sorts of conclusions. The fact that this guy has so many shady, shadowy foreign connections, particularly with regard to this war, which is a proxy war for the American deep state versus Russia, this war in Ukraine. People are jumping to all sorts of conclusions. Was it the deep state? Is this an example of the deep state, one of the intelligence agencies or some shadowy force in the U.S. government trying to assassinate Trump? Was it Ukraine trying to assassinate Trump? Was it just some rabid Democrat? This is a guy probably should have mentioned this off the top. I'd mentioned it in the introduction, but an important part of this guy's biography is that while he is unregistered with any political party, according to reports, he has donated to Democrats. He's written all sorts of posts in defense of Democrats. He had a tweet about how democracy is on the ballot, using a line from the Biden campaign. So he's a big lib. Is he just a rabid, crazy liberal Democrat? I don't know. I don't know what it is. And you're going to have people say, no, it certainly wasn't this group, or it certainly wasn't that group. I don't know. I don't know what it is. No one really knows. This is pretty weird. We haven't seen this. A presidential election year where a former president is running for re-election, wins his party nomination, is, for much of the race at least, the leading candidate in the race, a candidate that many shadowy forces in America have been trying to shut down since the first time he ran in 2015. They spied on his campaign. They tried to undermine his administration. They impeached him twice over nothing. They tried to imprison him. They prosecuted him. First time a former president's been prosecuted ever. They prosecuted him on 4 different fronts and counting. They then established the conditions, at the very least, that justified an assassination attempt. There was a successful assassination attempt. It did hit him in the head. He survived, it seems miraculously. Then a second assassination attempt. We haven't seen anything like this before. So you ask me, is it the deep state? Is it Ukraine? Is it because Trump is threatening to end the war in Ukraine? Well, what does that mean? Maybe that means that Zelensky's not going to get everything that he wants and the American gravy train is going to be cut off. Well, then Ukraine has a big motive to try to take him out. Is it some rabid Democrat? Is it, I don't know. What I know is all of those different groups have already gone to illegal lengths in the past to destroy Trump and his movement. That's what I know. You want to tell me, it couldn't possibly be part of the government that did this. I don't know. They illegally spied on him and they committed all sorts of crimes to undermine his campaign and administration. So don't tell me that they wouldn't go beyond the boundaries of the law to take him out. They've already proved that they would. It couldn't possibly be Ukraine. It couldn't possibly be Ukraine. Ukraine put me on a hit list, okay? Ukraine has engaged in all sorts of shadowy actions, both through the official government of Ukraine and especially through these non-governmental organizations and all these quasi, semi-private groups. Ukraine has already exceeded the boundaries of decorum, at least, and I think we would say the law. What about some rabid Democrat? The Democrats would never do this. What are you talking about? Joe Biden launched his campaign on the premise that Trump is an existential threat to democracy and he's the next coming of Adolf Hitler. That justifies assassinating him. So all of these groups would do it. They've all told us they would do it. I have no reason to believe that any of them would not. We don't know what it is. Are we going to find out what it is? There's 49 days left to the election. Have we seen the last of it? I got to give it to my friend Drew Clavin. Some of my other colleagues at the Daily Wire say, well, that's it. That debate, that was the final potential inflection point of the campaign. That's it. We're not going to see any more. And Drew keeps saying, I don't know. I think there's a twist or two left in this race. Well, here's the latest twist. I don't know. It couldn't be the government. It couldn't be Ukraine. It couldn't be the Democrats. All of them have expressed a desire to take this guy out by any means necessary. Kamala Harris joked about this. She joked, this is now an older clip, but she joked on the Ellen DeGeneres show about killing Trump, which we'll get to in 1 second. First, though, I want to tell you about ExpressVPN. Go to expressvpn.com/Knowles. Every time you go online with that ExpressVPN, your internet service provider can see every website you visit. In the US, ISPs can legally sell that information to advertisers, but there is a simple way to protect your digital privacy: ExpressVPN. Reroutes 100% of your traffic through secure encrypted servers. It is like having a personal bodyguard for your online activity. I have ExpressVPN, I think, on all of my devices. And it's even me. I'm a total Luddite, so I barely even know how to do this, but ExpressVPN makes it so simple. On my phone, on my tablet, on my laptop, whatever I want. ExpressVPN can keep those data locked down tight. It's incredibly easy to use. One click, you're protected across all of your devices. It's rated #1 by actual tech reviewers like CNET and The Verge. You protect your online privacy today by visiting expressvpn.com/Knowles, K-N-O-W-L-E-S. That is ExpressVPN, EXPRESSVPN.com/Knowles. You can get an extra 3 months for free. ExpressVPN.com/Knowles today. First of all, the two people who have now tried to kill Trump were both Democrat donors and rabidly anti-Trump, obviously. And Kamala Harris on the Ellen DeGeneres show joked about killing him.
If you had to be stuck in an elevator with either President Trump, Mike Pence, or Jeff Sessions, who would it be?
Does one of us have to come out alive?
Okay, some people are going to listen to this and say, oh, it's just a joke. And what? You wouldn't make a joke about that? You and one of your enemies is is one of us going to come out alive? Okay, you're right. That is just a joke. It's just a joke, right? Except in this case, it isn't. It's just a joke, except in this case, the Democrats have told the joke so many times and with such a straight face. And then they've followed through on the joke and they've made it a reality. They've made it a very serious fact. Was Maxine Waters joking when she said, when you see Republicans in public, you got to push back on them. You got to show them they're not welcome here? Was Hillary Clinton joking when she said, you can't be civil with these people? You can't be civil with Republicans? Was the assassin joking when he left California to show up to the home of Justice Brett Kavanaugh and try to murder him and potentially his family? Were the leftists, were they joking when they protested outside the home of Sam Alito in violation of the law which was not enforced and forced Alito to flee his home? Were they joking? Was the shooter in Pennsylvania? He was just joking. It was all just kind of a joke. Were they joking when they said Trump poses an existential threat to democracy and he's a Nazi and he admires Nazis and he threatens the very existence of the republic? Were they? It's only a joke if you're joking. They're not joking. Kamala isn't joking. She cackled when she made that joke. But these guys are deadly serious. Emphasis on the word deadly. Remember Colonel Vindman? I forget his formal title, but I remember he really insisted on it. This guy, Alexander Vindman, who was some loser from the federal government, who undermined, he was a subversive force in the government. He tried to throw out a democratically elected president, Trump. He was very involved in the Ukraine impeachment of Donald Trump. And he's fanatically in favor of continuing the war in Ukraine. And when he was referred to as Mr. Vindman, he said, I'm Lieutenant Deputy Assistant Junior Colonel Vindman, and I insist that you use my title. He was just one of the biggest jokers I've ever seen at the federal level, and that's saying something. Yesterday, his wife reacted to the news of Trump almost being murdered again, and her tweet was, "No ears were harmed. Carry on with your Sunday afternoon." Is she joking? I don't know. It seems to me, I'm getting the feeling these people aren't really joking. Remember the left-wing response, including from elected officials and fairly prominent Democrats after Trump was shot in the head but survived the first time? The left-wing response was, man, next time they need better aim. What a tragedy. He missed. That was their reaction. These are sick people, man. And they're not just joking around. You can draw a direct line from the Biden and now Harris campaigns to the shooter yesterday. You know how you can draw that direct line? Because there's a tweet from the shooter that says democracy is on the ballot. He writes to, this was just back in April of this year, he writes to the President of the United States, whoever that is, I guess we don't really know right now. Your campaign should be called something like KADAF. I don't really know it. Oh, Keep America Democratic and Free. Trump should be MASA, Make Americans Slaves Again. Master. Democracy is on the ballot and we cannot lose. We cannot afford to fail. The world is counting on us to show the way. That tweet written by the alleged assassin yesterday could have been written by the Biden campaign. It's just a series of Democrat talking points. It's a series of Biden-Harris talking points. He obviously wrote this back when Joe Biden was the nominee, but Harris literally copied and pasted Joe Biden's presidential platform. You can see it in the source code of her campaign website. Your campaign should be called Keep America Democratic and Free. Okay, those are the themes of the Democrat campaign this year, right? Democracy, freedom. Kamala's playing all the freedom songs at the DNC. Trump's should be called Make Americans Slaves Again, Master. Well, this was Joe Biden's attack on Mitt Romney a dozen years ago. These Republicans want to put you all back in chains. That's straight out of the Democrat talking point book. Democracy is on the ballot and we cannot lose. Democracy is on the ballot. That is straight from the Biden and Harris campaigns. We cannot afford to fail, straight from the Democrat campaigns. The world is counting on us to show the way. Every word there could have been written by the Democrats. And so it's why I'm so sickened when I see Kamala and the White House come out and say, oh, we're relieved that Trump is okay. You're relieved that Trump is okay. You justified the shooting. You continue to justify the shooting by calling Trump an existential threat to the Republic, by saying he imperils democracy itself, by comparing him to Hitler. You justify the shooting. This guy is only spouting your talking points, regardless of whether or not he is directly collaborating with anyone. And there are serious questions about this. Did Ukraine put him up to this? Did some NGO that maybe has some connection to the United States put him up to this? Was he acting alone? Even if he's acting alone, he's acting under the inspiration of the Democrats. He's parroting their talking points to justify killing Trump. And is this the end? 50 days left to go. I don't think we have any more debates coming up, which might be good for Trump, since the shootings seem to occur after the debates where the Democrats don't win or don't have a clear enough victory. Not good. Now, speaking of people's health, I got to talk to you about Lumen. Go to lumen.me/Knowles, Knowles. It's tough to prioritize your health, especially if you're not sure where to start. It's not just about making a decision. It's about a commitment to a better quality of life, which is why I love Lumen. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. I wish I had it on me. I keep forgetting to bring it into the studio because I keep it near to me. You know, I've got it in my office. You can take it home. You can transport it wherever you like. But what it does is it measures your metabolism through your breath. So you blow into it first thing in the morning. Maybe you blow into it after lunch. You blow into it and you can see whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs. What sets Lumen apart is its ability to understand you on a personal level. It takes your unique metabolic data, crafts a personalized nutrition plan for that day, tailored to your body's needs and goals. You know me, I'm a little bit of a Luddite, but this kind of technology is just so simple, which is my kind of technology. And then you don't need to worry, am I going to hire a personal nutritionist? Am I going to hire a private trainer? Am I going to hire this or that? You blow into your device, you get an insane amount of health data that can give you practical steps for your day. Go to lumen.me/Knowles, Knowles. Get 15% off Lumen, LUMEN.ME. Use Knowles for 15% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. I sat down with my friend Matt Walsh about 3-4 days ago. This was to figure out not only whether or not we are racist, but if we can correctly identify whether or not the other is racist.
Poor kids are just as smart as white kids. Isn't that it's Biden's famous?
It's a Biden quote.
Yeah, that's a famous Biden quote. That's what you think of me.
I don't know what you're going to say. I don't know what you're going to say.
I mean, I'm going to say yes.
What about all races? I'm just trying to figure out some way to get you in trouble on the show.
Am I racist? Why do you judge by the color of our faces? Is racial division just a plan by the Matrix? They burn down our cities, then they get called courageous. Instead of condemning the media, give them praises.
The politically correct version of this episode is available now on the Michael Knowles YouTube channel. However, if you want to see the full uncensored episode, including 2 questions not allowed on certain big tech platforms, exclusively for DailyWire members, you've got to go check that out at DailyWire Plus. We're going to turn from the Trump assassination for just a moment. Turn to Haitians grilling cats, allegedly. So there's this claim that migrants in Ohio are grilling cats. And The left has said that this is fake news. Trump brought it up in the debate. Left has said this is debunked, fake news, hateful, xenophobic, racist, terrible language. So Chris Rufo, a national treasure, has footage of, this is gross. If you're watching the show, maybe close your eyes for the next 10 seconds. He has footage of a cat being grilled in Ohio. So you can look at, even for me, I'm not the biggest animal person in the world, and I can't even look at it. Chris writes, we have discovered that migrants are in fact eating cats in Ohio. We have verified with multiple witnesses and visual cross-references that African migrants in Dayton, the next city over from Springfield, barbecued these cats last summer. And I can already hear the rebuttal. I can hear what the operatives at Media Matters or Right Wing Watch or whichever left-wing group is presently watching the live broadcast. They're going to say, Michael, this proves that we're right, because Trump said that it was Haitian migrants in Springfield, Ohio, grilling cats, and that video only shows that it was African migrants in Dayton, Ohio, grilling cats. Ha ha! Debunked. 7 Pinocchios. It's a lie. Please pardon my imprecision, perhaps my sloppy read of politics. It doesn't really matter to me if the migrants grilling pet cats are from a slightly different country and doing so in a slightly different Ohio town. That seems like a minor part of the story. Migrants are grilling pets in America. That is true. The libs told you that that isn't happening, and we have a video of it happening. And it's happening not by Afro-Caribbean migrants, but by African migrants. And it's happening not in Springfield, but in Dayton. And who knows? It's probably happening in Springfield too, and it's probably other migrants too, but we just don't know. I'm saying we only have video, actual video. You're seeing it with your own eyes, evidence of this happening. And that's going to be the rebuttal from the libs. I have to tell you, to me, this is vindicating Trump bringing up the cats and the dogs in the debate. All the genius pundits said, oh, why did he have to bring up why? He just should lay off the cats and the dogs. It's weird. It's very online. Why can't he just focus on the economy? And you'll hear this often from GOP strategists. Just talk about the economy. This was basically the whole Mitt Romney campaign. Just talk about the economy. It didn't work very well, of course, against Barack Obama. And Trump goes out there and goes, they're eating the cats. They're eating the dogs. And that was the most compelling moment of the debate for most people, or certainly up there, maybe with the abortion exchange. And the GOP consultants, though, head in their hands. Just, oh, no, this is absolutely terrible. Well, I don't know. What was the consequence of that? The consequence of that moment was the left took the bait, started reacting, said this was totally fake. Then the conservatives were able to prove it's real with video evidence. And everyone else was so jarred by it, they started talking about, wait, what? Eat the cats, eat the dogs. It trended on TikTok. They're eating the cats, eating the dogs. And you got Zoomers like doing little jigs to it. And then what happened? As they're all debating this, whether or not migrants are eating cats and dogs, people are then once again talking about the immigration issue, which is one of the strongest issues for Trump. And it is the weak point for the Democrats. And it has actually reframed the national conversation in a way that I think benefits Trump. Even though he said a silly thing about cats and dogs, he ended up being proven basically right. Maybe, who knows? We'll see what more video emerges, but maybe he got slight aspects of the minor details a little bit off, maybe. But the thing he said, the actual story that he's talking about, 100% proven correct. And at a deeper level, Americans don't like the mass migration. That's not just Republicans, that's independents, and that's Democrats. And now Kamala wanted to frame the election as one about access to contraception and IVF or something. Trump has reframed it again by speaking in his compelling way about migration. And he did it by talking about migrants eating cats and dogs, which they are doing. You know that this is a sensitive spot for the libs because they are calling Trump's ticket Nazi over it. Here's a headline from the New York Times on the very day or the day before Trump is nearly assassinated again. Headline, J.D. Vance's blood and soil nationalism finds its target. This is written by some person named Jamelle Bouie, who writes for the New York Times. Of course, once again, justifying assassination because the phrase blood and soil is associated with the Nazi Party. It's a German phrase that predates the Nazis, but it's very closely associated with the Nazis. So the headline is just that Trump's ticket is a Nazi ticket, which of course justifies assassinating the top and bottom of the ticket. The New York Times realized this looked really bad, especially in the light of an assassination attempt. So they retitled it, Shouldn't J.D. Vance Represent All of Ohio? Went from J.D. Vance's blood and soil nationalism finds its target. Then shouldn't J.D. represent all of Ohio? Because he's the Ohio senator. And the thesis, I won't force you to even listen to writing from this illiterate column. But the thesis is that J.D. Vance is not nice enough to the Haitians that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris imported into Ohio, largely against the will of Ohioans. That's the thesis. J.D. Vance and it's a really stupid attack, deeply ignorant, and as I said, illiterate. Also because J.D. Vance doesn't exhibit any characteristics of what you would call blood and soil nationalism. His wife is Indian, for goodness sakes. What are you talking about, blood and soil? What it shows you is that the left doesn't understand really anything about the right. So there are two options for patriotism in the left's mind. A kind of civic nationalism where America's just an idea, totally disconnected from historical reality. And blood and soil Nazism, where it's all just about the race and the purity of the race, and that's all that nationalism's about. There are alternatives. One obvious alternative would be what the political philosopher Joseph de Maistre called throne and altar conservatism, which is de Maistre identified the liberalism as triumphing in the French Revolution. This is a similar kind of observation made by Edmund Burke, widely considered a father of modern conservatism, made by a lot of people, which is that de Maistre said, in Considerations on France, he said, speaking of the French Revolution, that the revolution, that liberalism was founded on the fires that rage on the remains of thrones and altars. That was what it was about. The terms left and right come from the French Revolution. In the National Assembly, the radicals, the revolutionaries, the atheists sat on the left of the assembly, and the defenders of what was then the French monarchy and the church in France, once known as the eldest daughter of the church, they sat on the right. So obviously, people attack J.D. Vance for being a little too religious. People attack conservatives broadly for caring a little too much about order and not totally upending the order, not having social anarchy, which is what the left is giving us. Okay, well then attack it as a kind of traditionalist conservatism or something, but to call him a Nazi, it's not only dangerous because it justifies killing these people, but it's also just profoundly stupid. I mean, neither Trump nor J.D. Vance nor really any major conservative politician exhibits any of these traits. So I mentioned the debate earlier, that these shootings seem to coincide with the days following debates. The pundit reaction on the night of the second debate was that Kamala won very clearly. I went on Piers Morgan's show a day or two later, and he said it was a clear victory for Kamala. And I said, look, I thought Kamala did relatively well. Her predecessor basically died on stage, so she certainly did better than Joe Biden. And Trump missed some opportunities, sure, but I don't think it was a total clear-cut victory. The pundit class said, no, it was a total clear-cut victory. Trump really lost. Kamala really won. Well, a poll that just came out of YouGov suggests that's maybe not the case. And they asked two questions, not even about the debate, but about what happened after the debate. Taylor Swift endorsed right after the debate. And Republicans had been waiting for this for a long time. Taylor Swift, the biggest pop star in the world. Oh no, she's going to endorse Kamala. She's being artificially promoted, some of them suggested, so that she can endorse Kamala and it's going to sway all these votes. Well, the numbers, the polling and survey numbers on what the Taylor Swift endorsement means tell you a lot, not just about Swift and Kamala. They tell you a lot about the relationship between Americans and the media, because the results will shock you. But first, I'm going to tell you about Matt's movie, Am I Racist? It's the number 4 movie in the country. It's got a 99% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes with over 1,000 reviews. Now we need to make week 2 even bigger. I think this movie is drop down hilarious. I think it is better than Matt's first movie, What is a Woman? As a whole movie. I'm not saying, this issue matters more than the transgender issue, but as a coherent whole of a movie, I was gut-bustingly laughing the entire time. The interviews that Matt scored are insane. Usually with funny movies, they put all the best stuff in the trailer. In this case, they didn't. They explicitly left the best stuff out of the trailer. You have to see this movie. Go to amiracist.com right now for tickets and showtimes near you. Tell your friends, family, neighbors, coworkers, tell everyone. Keep filling up those theaters. Thank you to everyone who joined us for opening weekend. Let's keep the momentum going. Go to amiracist.com. My favorite comment on Friday is from Trail of a Trillion Tears, 1045, who says, I don't understand what they expect Trump to do. The people of Ohio are crying out. Should no one listen to them? Well, the answer from the liberal establishment is no, they should not listen. The people of Ohio, the people of Pennsylvania, and the people of Wisconsin, they're deplorable, irredeemable, Bible-thumping, bitter-clinging idiots who are evil, and they're probably Nazis, and they need to shut up, because if they ever have their way at the ballot box, it will amount to an insurrection and a coup d'etat and the end of our republic. That's what they believe. Get a couple drinks in the Beltway types of the liberal establishment. That is what you will hear. And in fact, the libs are already setting the stage for another contested election, which we'll get to in one second. First, though, what do you think? I'm just going to ask you the question asked in the survey. Taylor Swift recently endorsed Kamala Harris for president. Do you think her endorsement will have a positive or negative effect on Harris's campaign? Very positive, somewhat positive, neither, somewhat negative, very negative, not sure. What would you say? I don't want to speak for you. I don't want to presume to speak for you, but I bet the vast majority of you listening right now would say, it will have a positive or very positive effect on the campaign. That's what I would say. She's the biggest pop star in the world. People really like her. She became a billionaire after her Eras tour. So yeah, it's going to have a very positive, and that's what people respond. 23% say it'll have a very positive effect. 32% say it'll have a somewhat positive effect. 27% say neither positive or negative. Only 2% say a somewhat negative effect. Only 5% say a very negative effect, and 11% say they're not sure. So you've got 55% of people say it'll be somewhat positive or very positive. Only 7% say it'll be negative. Very clear. And only 27% say neither. Okay, so clear consensus. Taylor Swift's endorsement is really going to matter, and it's really going to make people more likely to vote for Kamala. Then the next question on the survey was, does Taylor Swift's endorsement of Kamala Harris make you more or less likely to vote for her? 5% say much more. 3% say somewhat more. So 8% total say more. 66% say no difference. 2% say somewhat less. 18% say much less. 5% not sure. I'm going to put all those numbers together. 55% of people say the Taylor Swift endorsement of Kamala is going to have a great positive effect on Kamala's campaign. Only 7% say it'll have a negative effect. But when you say, okay, how does it affect your view of Kamala? How does it affect your likelihood to vote for her? Only 8%. So it's like they flip. The numbers flip. Only 8% say this will make me more likely to vote for Kamala, and a whopping 20% say this will make me less likely to vote for Kamala. Those two questions show you the difference between prediction and personal behavior. We have a sense that everybody thinks and acts a certain way. When we all have that sense. But then when you ask people about their personal behaviors, it's the opposite. So why is there such a chasm between our perception of society and the way that we actually behave when you ask us about us personally? Because of media propaganda. Because we don't talk to everybody in the country. We perceive things mediated by the media. And the media lie to us. They give us a false perception of the country. In reality, there is a major chasm between media perception and reality, both in the perception of it and in our behavior. Because we don't, even though we perceive, we say, man, everyone in the country is going to do a certain thing, and that's too bad, but I'm not. It's actually not working on us. If the media propaganda were really, really good, both of those questions would agree. They'd say, yeah, Taylor Swift is going to make me much more likely, is going to make other people more likely to vote for Kamala, and it's going to make me more likely to vote for Kamala. But the media propaganda isn't quite that good. People are saying, yeah, I don't really give a damn what the media tells me to do. I'm not going to vote for Kamala. But I bet other dupes are going to vote for Kamala. So it's the media propaganda is good enough that we still think the media have a lot of power. But it's no longer good enough to actually persuade us to do what it wants us to do. It's a real subtle point that's in the tabs of this survey. But that, to me, is one of the most interesting polls, most interesting surveys to come out of this election. And you can tell that the media are getting very nervous about this. At least in the way that the media are presenting this, they don't seem to be quite as confident as they once were. The New York Times is already telling us, hey guys, don't expect the results on election night. New York Times just came out with this. Harris or Trump, once again, election results could take a while. More Americans are using mail-in ballots, which take longer to count than those cast in person. In several battleground states, a winner may not be apparent on November 5th. This is ridiculous stuff. And why? How do they explain it? They say, if a winner is not declared on election night, it will not necessarily point to failures in the process. Oh, no. Oh, no, don't think that. No. More likely, it will be the result of the intense security measures required for counting mail-in ballots. It's actually, the longer it takes to give this election to Kamala is the proof of how super duper secure it is. Election officials across the country are trying to telegraph to voters that waiting long hours or even days for a result is not unexpected in a close situation. They are eager to counter conspiracy theorists who may seize on the uncertainty as evidence of fraud or malfeasance. Okay, why has it taken so long? Well, because I'll tell you what they're saying is the reason it'll take so long is because not everyone's voting on computers. The people who vote in person are largely voting on computers, but some people are sending in their mail-in ballots. And the mail-in ballots, you see, you got to count them. They're paper ballots. So you got to count them, and that's going to take a long time. Okay, well, how come all the elections that we had just about before computers for like the whole history of our country, how come we could finish those in a day, pretty much all the time? How come in 1960, when there was a contested election between Nixon and Kennedy, and the Kennedys perhaps stole that election, how come we had an answer by the next morning? But now we have fancy computers and all these ways to make the process more efficient, and it takes us days and weeks. I was talking to a French friend of mine last night who observed that in France, the election results the same day. Maybe it takes some extra hours or something, but you know the results. Why here? And another friend of mine said, well, France is a smaller country. Yeah, it's not that much smaller, and the states are supposed to conduct the elections. So why can't the states, which are smaller than France, why can't the states just like figure it out and get the numbers in on time? Because they don't want to. Because there are states in this country that don't want the elections to be efficient. They want it to take days and weeks. Because if the longer it takes, the less scrutiny there will be on the ballots, the greater the likelihood that there will be some shenanigans, the greater opportunity for shenanigans. The New York Times is telling us with a straight face, actually, the longer this drags on, the longer it takes, the more confident you can be in the results of the election. Has that ever been true in any election anywhere? If this kind of stuff were coming out of Venezuela, if this same article were not in the New York Times, but the Venezuela Times, the State Department would say this is evidence of a totalitarian party stealing the election. This is evidence before the election that they're going to steal the election. The State Department would impose sanctions on them for this. But here, our lapdog media, which exists as nothing more than propagandists for the liberal state, they come out and they tell you with a straight face, no, it's really good. The fact that we changed the election rules and got rid of election integrity measures, that shows you how much integrity is in the election. We'll see if Trump is alive by election day. There are a lot of people who would not like that to be the case and who are getting real close to having that tragic circumstance come to pass. The rest of the show continues now. You don't want to miss it. Become a member. Use code Knowles, KNWLAS at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans.
Republicans are Nazis. You cannot separate yourselves from the bad white people.
Growing up, I never thought much about race. It never really seemed to matter that much, at least not to me. Am I racist?
I would really appreciate it if you left.
I'm trying to learn. I'm on this journey. If I'm going to sort this out, I need to go deeper undercover.
They gon' say I'm racist.
Joining us now is Matt, certified DEI expert.
Here's my certification. And what you're doing is you're stretching out of your whiteness. This is more for you in this field. Is America inherently racist?
The word inherent is challenging there.
I want to rename the George Washington Monument to the George Floyd Monument.
America is racist to its bones.
So inherently.
Yeah, this country is a piece of
white
folks,
white
trash, white supremacy, white woman, white boy.
Is there a black person around here? This black person right here, does he not exist?
Say I'm racist.
Hi, Robin.
Hi, what's your name?
I'm Matt.
I just had to ask who you are because you have to be careful.
Never be too careful.
They gon' say you racist.
In theaters now. Rated PG-13.